So I was speaking here about John was complaining about the not about the exam environment, but about the exam content. First of all, that the where was that? That the questions were completely ambiguous. That's with a lot of Cisco questions. So of course, if there were too ambiguous, then that's a problem clearly. Then because the simulator did not work and he spent a bunch of 20 minutes, which that's not a good thing. You should, of course, if simulator didn't work, that's a problem, but you should not spend 20 minutes on a question, whatever the question is. You should just move on. And as I was saying, you should rate a case with Cisco. If there's anything wrong within the exam, it's their fault. Raise a case, be persistent, and you should get your money back or a free reseat to the exam. And at the same time, you're going to save other people's, let's say, experiences, that by doing this, Cisco is going to fix up what the problems are in the exam. Likewise, John is pretty pissed off because he has read the 2 books, took the paid for Cisco training, completed the CPD Nuggets training, paid for the video course on Cisco, as well as hours upon hours of lab work over a 6 months period, and I have never came across some of the subjects on the exam. Now, it depends of how many questions are in there which you have never seen before. Because, so first of all, if a question is related to a topic which is in the blueprint, if that is fair game, unless of course it's a too advanced question. But if it's related to a topic within the exam and it's at a decent level of it's not too advanced, not intermediate, it's just a basic question about something related to the exam, then it is fair game. Likewise, it's like in any exam, you can always expect that some questions, I mean, if you want to take a CCNP exam and you're just at the CCNP level, you're always going to find in the exam questions for which you don't know the answer, or about technologies that you have never seen before. That is expected. But those will be, I don't know, out of 70 questions, you're going to get like 2, 3, 4, 5 questions maybe which are going to be a bit awkward, or a bit which are not 100% so close to the exam blueprint, but that is fair game and you cannot fail the exam because of those. But if there's too many questions like that, if the questions are out of topic, if the questions are too ambiguous, if you have more than one correct answer and you have to put one correct answer, if the simulator doesn't work, then always raise a case. Let the Pearson view monitor guy that monitors you, so he's aware of that. He can raise a ticket with Pearson view, and then that case escalate with Cisco, and at the same time open up a Cisco case on their support portal. They have a portal dedicated for certifications and support. Open a ticket, explain what the problem was, and they're going to be able to connect and collect the logs of your exam, investigate that, and see if there's a problem. You're going to get a free reimbursement. But if the problem was that you were not able to properly use the GUI of the exam, like you don't know how to click back and forward, then you're not going to get anything back. So one relevance, as you can see, for this problem, like if I would be you in this case, and I would consider going to the exam like within the appropriate future, I would reconsider that. I would, for example, keep in contact with John and ask him if he escalated with Cisco, and if Cisco found out to be a problem on their software, and if they promised to fix it, and then I would go in the exam. It doesn't make sense to spend whatever the amount of money is for the exam, $200 to $300, on going to the exam and getting frustrated because the content is just bad in there. It doesn't make sense. Likewise in here, except people speaking about the exam content, as you can see, they don't speak about ideally about the exam content, about the questions from the exam, but about the experience from the exam, which that is not breaking the NDA. You can speak about if the questions seemed fair, if the simulator worked, if the exam worked, and things like that. Now, it's also people asking a lot of questions in here. Some people also putting in here specific documents. Now, you have to be careful, with all of those blogs and all of those documentation being available from so many people. You got to be careful from which documents you choose to learn. I mean, who do you choose to believe? And as I was saying, in general, you just, whatever you read, you go and practice to verify that up. Doesn't matter who tells you, what tells you, always verify that up. Not because you don't believe in them, but because that's how you reinforce and you gain knowledge. Also, you can go on our forum. So you can also go and and ask questions on our forum. It is ioc.com. So it is ioc.com. It is split into technologies, sections, different types of forums. There we go. You make an account, you log in here, and you can put questions about whatever topics you want. So for example, you can go under the CCNA forums. And of course, it's not only CCNA forums, it's both CCNA, CCNP, CCNA forums. For example, let's say CCNA. There you go, CCNA and CCNP, CCNP voice, CCNP security, and so on. You go in there, you put a question, and in most cases, you're going to get an answer from either me or Brian or any of my colleagues, or from Dave or from any other instructors, which is going to be, technically speaking, an answer which should be correct and 100% accurate on your question. So you got to make sure that when you put a question on a forum, you got to make sure that whoever answers, you take that answer not as for granted, but also you go in and test that up for verification. It's so very wrong to learn things the wrong way. So it's very difficult to memorize something and to learn it the wrong way and then try to change that in your head or try to remove that knowledge, because it doesn't go away that easily. So that is the forums. Okay, then what else you can do except of the study group is one of the things to get to prepare for not for the exam but for the exam experience is using Cisco's available exam questions, which they have this available for most of their certifications at CCNA and CCNP level. This is especially useful if you have never taken any exam at all, and you don't want to get confronted for the first time with how the exam looks like. So go and see what are the type of questions or what you should expect for. Is going to ease up the stress level in the exam day. And not only that, but I'm going to show you next, we're going to do a couple of those randomly, because I want to show you exactly how should you approach a question in the case you know the answer, in the case you're not sure about the answer, and in the case you don't know the answer, and of course that can happen. So what is the strategy you should take in there? But regardless which approach you take, always remember, don't stay more than like 4 or 5 minutes on a question, except if it's a simulator. And if it's a simulator, you stay in there like 10-15 minutes only if what you do works. Because if it doesn't, I mean, you should know, you should trust yourself on what you're doing. And if you're doing things right and it doesn't work, it means it's a simulator issue. And you just have to move on. So let's take a look at the exam sample questions. So let's go again on Cisco's website, and here under the practice, I think it is. Okay, it's a couple of like what, 10-15 questions. Let's take review now the security concepts. Okay, I got a login. Let me do that from here. Okay, let's say review now. So the first thing you do now, a lot of us, we ask people how the exam was. And then they state, well, it's many questions, the answers are, complicated, you gotta rush it. So you go in the exam and you rush your exam, which it's a wrong approach. So if you're not knowledgeable enough and you're gonna rush it, you're gonna have even lesser chances to pass anyways. So what you have to do is you have to properly read the question and then find your best strategy to identify the answer based on if you know the technology they're asking about, if you're not sure about it, or if you have no idea, because you still have to get an answer to a question in order to move on. But don't rush reading the exam question and the exam available answers, because in the end you're going to end up actually reading the question 3 or 4 times to understand it, because you rushed it to begin with, and you're still not going to get the exactly what they're asking about. And hopefully we're going to see some examples. Hopefully we may get lucky. Otherwise we're just going to look at the examples, and it's still going to benefit you from the exam point of view. So So let's say next. So first question, it states which two statements, so it's two statements, are true about a current threadscape. Choose two. And let's take it bottom down, doesn't matter. Let's take the last one. It states it is so complex that it is impossible to catalog in its entirety. Now, just by reading that question, I have not looked it up to the other answers, but it looks like there's no way this is a valid answer, right? I mean, how can something be so complex that it is impossible to catalog in its entirety? So of course this could be one of the answers, but it's unlikely that it is, because it doesn't make sense. This one says, due to recent improvements in security technology, password attacks no longer play a significant role in the threadscape. Now let's think about it. So password attacks, if you understand what a password attack is and what are the options to hack a password, you're going to speak about it, like brute force attack, dictionary attack, or guessing. Most of the password attacks have to do with the fact that the password is very weak. Okay, so it's a user problem. So how can a specific technology fix a user's problem which fails to put in a proper, secure, lengthy password? I mean, likewise, from my point of view, this is not one of the possible answers. Because if the problem is with the user that is putting in their weak password, how could the technology fix that around? Because it's still the user who puts in the password. So you just have to read the question and understand if the answer has something to do with the question. The threat landscape is constantly evolving. Now, even if you don't read that, which is of course written in a lot of Cisco's documentations, just being in a security field a couple of months, just being present in a security field, you're going to notice that exact behavior. That the number of threats and the types of threats are constantly changing, becoming more and more evolved and more powerful, and they change constantly. So clearly that is a 100% correct answer. And the first one, it says that the technology industry is the only industry that is exempt from attack, which is again wrong. So clearly this is actually the opposite. So the technology industry is the one that is actually not exempted from an attack. So A is not correct 100%, B it is 100%. Now I gotta choose one more from C and D, and none of them seem to be like this is one of those questions like John was complaining, saying that the answers are so ambiguous, you know, which is the case, because I just stated before that C and D don't look to be, you know, correct answers. But now because A is 100% not correct, B is 100% not correct, I gotta choose one more between C and D. So, due to recent improvements in security technology, password attacks no longer play a significant role in threadscape. It is so complex that it is impossible to catalog in its entirety. So now I would choose C, due to recent improvements in security technologies. And of course this means that you have to be knowledgeable and aware about what is called multi-factor authentication, or two-factor authentication, or the use of tokens, or, you know, mixed or multiple authentications. Because the problem resides on the users, clearly, because they put weak passwords. But if you implement a one-time password technology, which it's another discussion, which basically what that means is it's like when you access your bank account and you use that token to put in you get a challenge from the bank's website, and then you put that challenge in your token. The token gives an answer, a passcode, and you put that passcode in the browser to authenticate. That's the one-time password, let's say, solution. But of course it has a lot of variations, a lot of options, and different ways of being deployed, and different let's say features behind the scenes. So clearly there you go, I have added B and C, and I hope those are the correct answers. But as you've seen, it was not easy to find out the correct answer. So first of all, you had to read properly the question in the answers, and then I ended up by exclusion between C and D to state that D is 100% not correct, which means C should be, because they're referring to the one-time password technology, which, by the way, chances are you're not going to be exposed to those in the official certification guide. They may not speak about those kinds of technologies. But as you can see, the question is basically, it's very basic. They don't ask you the details of how OTP works, what does it do, what are the variations of OTP implementations. The question here is just about you knowing about the OTP, let's say, technology. So let's say next. What is the most common type of spoofing? This is clearly one of the questions that, first of all, you got to know what spoofing is. So if the previous question was not a question targeting a specific technology, was a broader question about the threat landscape, okay? Now this question is very specific. This question is about types of spoofing and which ones are common. So it means that to be able to answer this question, you should know what spoofing is, what are types of spoofing, and which are more common ones, and why. So for example, at this question, I know what spoofing is, I know what are types of spoofing, but still, because I have not read Cisco's official certification guide, I may not be aware which ones are more common ones. What I'm going to answer here, I'm going to answer the ones that I believe to be most common, which may not be what Cisco states in their documentation. So I gotta choose one of those. So application spoofing, service spoofing, DHCP spoofing, IP address spoofing, and MAC address spoofing. Now, I would state in here that IP address spoofing is the most common type for a specific reason. So for example, I have no idea what Cisco states, to be honest, what is the most common type of spoofing. The reason why I choose IP address spoofing is, again, because I know what spoofing means, and I know that IP spoofing is involved as an important tool for other kinds of attacks. So although IP spoofing is an attack by itself, it is primarily used as a gateway towards other kind of attacks. Like when we speak about like amplification attacks, reflection attacks, denial of service attacks. So because of that, and I know those attacks are happening, I would choose IP spoofing. But let's see what Cisco states as to be a valid answer. And next, which type of password attack is most likely to succeed? So this means in here, this means that you have to know what password attack is and what are the options that hackers are using to get their hands on the user's passwords. Then once you know those attacks, even if you don't know which one is more common, okay, even if you don't know which one is more common, just by knowing how each of the attack types is different to the other, you should be able to give your best answer, which luckily is going to be the one that Cisco is looking for. Otherwise, of course, if you have probably read somewhere in Cisco's documentation, probably they're stating somewhere which one is the most common likely to succeed as well. But it has to make sense. I mean, in general, if you know how things work, you should be able to end up with a proper answer without reading what Cisco states to be the best answer. So one of the things that most of us freak out in the exam is if we have a question for which we have not read the answer somewhere, we panic. Which you shouldn't do that. You just, as long as you know what the technology is about, read the question and try to think about what could be the best answer. And if your logic is correct and you know the technologies, you should end up with the correct answer in most cases, which means you're going to pass the exam. So which type of password attack is most likely to succeed? Guessing attack, dictionary attack, brute force attack, online password attack. So first of all, there is no such thing as online password attack, so this is 100% a wrong answer. Now, because I know brute force attack is like the most difficult attack to achieve, I would state that that is not most likely to succeed. Oh, so let's read the question again. It says which one of the attacks, not which one is more common, but which one is most likely to succeed. So I would state in here clearly, as I was saying, online password attack is not an option. So which one is more likely to succeed? I would go ahead and pick up, let's think about it. I'll not pick up guessing, I'm going to pick up dictionary or brute force attack, which I'm going to pick up dictionary attack. That is because dictionary attack relies on a set of commonly used passwords by people, which is what people do. They put common passwords in there, and I would state that that's the most likely to succeed because it basically exploits common people vulnerability. They put common passwords. Most of us use the same convention to put in our passwords. Let's see how many I got right, how many I got correct. So number answered correctly, it is 1 out of 3. Let's see what's in there. So on the first question, I answered correctly that the threat landscape is constantly evolving. And then it states that one of the statements which are correct about the threatscape is that it is so complex that it is impossible to calculate in its entirety. So if Cisco shows up that this is the correct answer, then of course I would have filled this, and it means that is the correct answer. There's nothing for me to comment. Then this one, I was right in here that the IP address spoofing was correct. As I was saying, mainly because this is the most common type, mainly because it is used in a lot of other attacks. While the other types of spoofing, like application spoofing, service, DHCP, or MAC attacks, are mainly used as attacks by themselves, not as tools for other kind of attacks. And then the last question was, which type of password attack is the most likely to succeed? Clearly, the brute force attack is always most likely to succeed, but it just takes longer. The guessing attack is less likely. It depends on how the password is configured, while dictionary attack is basically somewhere in the middle, which has to do with if the user is using common password. So my logic was that dictionary should be the most likely to succeed because it exploits people's vulnerabilities. But at the same time, from the technical point of view, the brute force attack is most likely to succeed. So in here, I failed to put in the proper answer from my point of view because the question was indeed not clear enough. Because the brute force attack is most likely to succeed from the technical point of view, but it takes longer. Then dictionary attack is most likely to succeed from the vulnerabilities point of view, and it is going to be a faster way of breaking users' passwords. So this can happen for you as well. But you're not going to get so many questions as I had. I had 1 out of 3, which you're going to get like 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 70 questions like this, which may be ambiguous, and you may not find out the proper answer.